We are following the book of Ecclesiastes, and I confess to you that when we were planning the series for the year, I was a little reluctant to have a series on this book because it's a very difficult book, not only to read and to understand, but also to preach. I would say, at least for me, I don't know about Mauricio, but at least for me, it takes twice the time, right, to prepare the messages on Ecclesiastes. It's a very difficult and hard book. So, but we are happy that we are here. We are talking about the meaning of life. Actually, the book of Ecclesiastes brings a question in the beginning of the book, and this is the question that drives the preacher. Ecclesiastes means the preacher. And this question on verse 3, Ecclesiastes 1:3, drives the whole book. And the question is, what does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? This is the famous Monday morning question. You wake up tomorrow morning and you have to work, and at some point you are really tired already on Monday, and you think, what's the point in doing that? Why am I working here hard? Is it for the money? Is it for acknowledgement? Is it for power, influence, personal fulfillment? What's the answer? And this is the question that the book of Ecclesiastes is trying to answer. What's the point? What's the profit? What's the gain that we have in life? And in the first two chapters, the preacher brings six attempts to find the answer. We have wisdom and knowledge. We have pleasure and enjoyment. So let me make a pause here. We have the handouts for today, okay? If you don't have one of these, I would recommend you to take one in our welcome center. It's very nice so you can follow the message and keep your attention, okay? So 6 attempts to find the answer, to find meaning, the purpose in life. In the first 2 chapters, wisdom and knowledge. However, he comes to the conclusion that life doesn't make sense. Pleasure and enjoyment. And then he says, well, it's so temporary. We have pleasure today, and then we are again wanting more pleasure tomorrow. And then great projects and achievements. And then wealth and possessions. And never enough. You have money and you want more money. So practical wisdom to live well, to live a good life, not a foolish life. And he says, at the end, the wise and the fool will die the same way. So what's the point in being wise in life? And then hard work. And he says, well, the goal is just to work. But there is frustration. So all these attempts, they bring a kind of empty inside. They are vanity. This is a word that the preacher uses here a lot. And it's interesting that it's a very sad conclusion that he has here in the 2 first chapters. It's almost like the philosopher Schopenhauer, who said that life swings like a pendulum, backward and forward between pain and boredom. Pain because we don't have things and we want to have things. We want to find things. And then we suffer because of that. And then when we have those things, we are bored with those things. They don't satisfy. It's the same spirit of Oscar Wilde that said there are only two tragedies in life. One is not getting what one wants, and the other tragedy is getting it. So you suffer because you don't have, you suffer when you have it. So what's the meaning? What's the point? So this is the discussion here in Ecclesiastes. Chapter 1, chapter 2, 6 attempts, and then comes chapter 3, our text today. There is a new perspective. There is a new element that the preacher is bringing to our consideration. And this aspect, this new element, we call time. And we'll see that time, in a good perspective about time, can change everything. Time is a very good teacher. Although, as Spurgeon once said, he said, time is a good teacher. The problem is that it kills all his students. Time is a good teacher for us. So let's read the text and let's see what the preacher has for us today in this quest of meaning and purpose in life. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 to 15. You have the Bibles, and page 617. I'll read the first 15 verses in here, okay? It says, "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. What gain has the worker from his toil?" He repeats the question. "I have seen the business that God has given to the children of men to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, He has put eternity into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. I perceive that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done it so that people fear before Him. That which is already has been. That which is to be already has been. And God seeks what has been driven away. So, when I came with my family from Brazil to Canada 9 years ago, my first lesson here was about time, was about weather. When I left Brazil, I was in Rio. AC in the airport was broken, and it was 42 degrees on December 2016. When I came here 24 hours later, it was minus 15. So I had to learn very fast about weather, right? And one of the lessons I got here in Canada was about the seasons. Because in a tropical country like Brazil, we don't have seasons like we have here. We don't have the distinction about seasons, right? I never thought, for example, that we need to have a specific set of clothes for every season. And when my wife comes to buy more clothes, I said, why? You don't know the season? There's a new season. There's a jacket for 0 degrees. There's a jacket for minus 10. There's a jacket for minus 20. And we need to be prepared for every season. And a beautiful thing about seasons is that they come and they go. So now we are a little depressed. And team, it's the time for you to make the great question, right? Why am I here? Right? Right? Cold is coming. But team, have hope that the season will pass. Right? Spring will come. Right? So we learn in Canada to respect the seasons, to understand that life happens in seasons. And this is what the writer, the preacher, is saying here, that for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. And then he starts a kind of exercise of observation about life. And he will use 14 pairs of opposites. He uses a figure of speech called merism. Maybe you never heard about this name, merism, but this is a figure of speech that uses opposites to represent the whole thing. For example, when you say high and low, you are trying to say everywhere, right? Everything. Or for better or for worse. You are trying to say all potential outcomes. Or when the Bible says in the beginning, in Genesis 1:1, that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So it's not the case that God just created heaven and earth. What we have there is a merism, which is that between heaven and earth, God created everything. So when he uses here 14 pairs of opposites, he is trying to say that there is a time for everything. He's just explaining what he said in verse 1. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. The first one maybe is the most complete, the biggest opposite. A time to be born and a time to die. And between these two moments, there is your whole life. So for everything in your life, there is a time, not only to die or to be born and to die. So what he's saying here is a common observation. You don't need to be very smart. You don't need to be a theologian to understand that that life happens in seasons. There are many philosophers that say that. You don't need to be a genius to come to that conclusion. This is common observation. Nietzsche could be, saying that. Even if you don't believe in God, you can observe life and you see that there is times, specific times for everything. And we could learn lots of lessons in here with these observations. For example, last month, I heard this news about Usain Bolt, Janet's friend. Where is Janet? Janet's not here today? Okay. So Janet is from Jamaica, and Usain Bolt, Jamaican. And you know Usain Bolt, the fastest ever. And I just heard that he's struggling right now with a kind of injury in his legs. And he said 1 month ago this to a newspaper. When I walk upstairs, I get out of breath. Usain Bolt! And I was really comforted with this, right? I was really, really encouraged by that statement. Because if Usain Bolt, who is now 39 years old, is in that situation, what about me, a great athlete in the past, you know? But now I'm 51, and I feel the same, right? So the point is that there is a time to be the fastest one in the world, and there is a time when you struggle to climb stairs. Life happens in seasons. But the point here, and we cannot be distracted by these common sense observations. From verse 9 to verse 15, there are at least 3 very deep and solid theological statements. He makes the observation, and now he says, what about that? And he will bring 3 statements that reveal his conviction about time. And let me share with you those statements right now. They are the core of this message. So the first statement is that God planned the seasons of life. It is not random. It is not fate. It is not just that you have a season for this and a season for that. What he's saying here is that God is the mind beyond or before that, right? So he uses here 4 times. He says, verse 11, He has made. And then 11 again, God has done. And then verse 14, whatever God does. And then God has done it. Seasons were planned. And when you go to Genesis chapter 1, the narrative of the creation, you see Genesis 1, verse 14 and 15, that God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night. And let them be for signs, and notice that, for seasons, and for days, and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. So God planned, God created, God existed before time. We are trapped in time. We are bound to time. We are here and we cannot go beyond this day. You don't know what will happen tomorrow with you. But God is before time. God don't see time like you and me. God see time from outside. And God see at the same time past, present, and future. And God is seeing everyone at the same time. Because God is not trapped in time like you and me. God created time. This is the first observation we have in here. God has made these seasons. God planned the seasons. But more than that, there is a second statement. And even I can say a stronger one that says that God controls time and history. God is sovereign over everything and everyone, including time. He not only Not only He created, He planned, but He controls time today and forever. He says here, verse 14, I perceive that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. And when you read the Bible in a whole, in its entirety, you see that God is in absolute control of time. God says, God plans what will happen, even in the smallest details of life. For example, we have Psalm 139, which says, your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. So God controls, God says, God plans, and God executes everything in its time. He is never late. He is never in a hurry like we can think. Isaiah chapter 46 says, I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times, things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will accomplish all my purpose. You remember that Jesus said that even the hairs of your head are all numbered. This is what in theology we call doctrine, the doctrine of providence. God is in control of everything. It's beautiful how some old confessions of faith talked about this doctrine of providence. One of them is the Confession of Heidelberg from 1563, from 1563, and it says there, God's providence is His almighty and ever-present power by which He upholds, as with His hand, heaven and earth and all creatures, and so rules them that leaf and blade, rain and drought, fruitful and lean ears, food and drink, health and sickness, prosperity and poverty. All things, in fact, come to us not by chance, but by His fatherly hand. I know this doctrine brings lots of challenges to you and to me. I don't have time now to enter in every single detail about the doctrine of providence. But I just challenge you, if you want to know more, you can talk to me, you can talk to Maurice, we can read together. For example, John Piper's book, 700 pages on providence. It's a brick. And we can read it together. There are lots of information. And the interesting thing about this John Piper's book is that he goes from Genesis to Revelation. And he shows how God's providence is present from Genesis to Revelation. God plans history. God is in control of history. It's not fate. It's not random. There is someone in control of everything. So this is the second statement. You know the first statement, God planned everything. God planned the seasons of life. And then God controls time and history. He's saying that God is the author of everything. Verses 9 to 15, he's saying that. But there is something more. And here we come to the challenge of our message today. Number 3, God's providence is always good. God's providence is always good. Verse 11, the preacher says, God has made everything beautiful in its time. And you can think, seriously? Because he was talking here about the seasons of life using those merisms. A time to be born. Wow, yeah, this is really beautiful. It's beautiful to see a baby coming. By the way, this week my nephew will be born, Benjamin's and Tayanis. We'll pray for that. Time to be born, beautiful. But a time to die? Is it beautiful? He says here, a time to plant and a time to pluck up, or a time to kill. Is it beautiful? Or when he finishes, he says, a time for war. Is it beautiful? So it's very hard to understand what God is saying, God is talking in here. First of all, let's understand that the word beautiful in here means literally appropriate. It is something that fits well. It is something right for the moment. So, second place, let's keep reading the text. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. He brings this word here, a very important word, that God puts eternity in our hearts, which means that we are able to see life from an eternal perspective. I never saw a pet, a cat, a dog, depressed or anxious because it's about to die. A cat with cancer. Then we need to go and bring the cat to the psychologist so the cat can, have some counseling about life, about how to die well. No, we don't have this. Why? Because the animals, they don't have eternity in their hearts. But as human beings, we have this sense that there is more than just these few years of our lives in here. And this is not something new. When you go to the ancient Egyptians, the pharaohs that built pyramids in the hope that one day they could be resurrected with all their wealth and power, well, eternity in their hearts. And the text doesn't say that only believers have eternity in their hearts. No, every single human being, because we are created in God's image, we have eternity in our hearts. However, we are not able to see the whole picture in our finitude. We are living here trapped in time. We hope for something there, but we cannot see. We cannot see. This is what he's saying. So that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. We were not there in the past. We are not there in the future. We are living the present. And we don't have the ability. We don't know everything, every detail. we cannot put the whole puzzle together. And this is a hint for us to understand that although he says he has made everything beautiful, for God, in God's perspective, everything is beautiful. But we cannot see from that side, that point of view, our advantage point, how things are beautiful today. We cannot make sense of everything, but God can, because he is not trapped in time. And the best example I found to show you is with that picture that you see here. You have that picture, and you don't know well, right? What's that? It's a tapestry. It's a tapestry. The back side, inside out. But when we turn the tapestry, we see the front. And what you can see? You see that. You know, Rebecca is very good in, doing things he learned with Viv, and he did this here. If you want, she can do one for you, okay? You just pay her. So, look at that. This is the inside out, right? You see lots of things like that here, right? But when you see the other side, the right side, you see that it's perfect, right? It's like the crown. And the point here is that it's the same thing, the same object, but there are two sides that you can see it. And when the preacher says everything, God made everything beautiful, because God can see the crown, God can see the perfect side. And now, from that side, from our perspective, we just see the left picture. And we come to a beautiful conclusion in here that just because we can't see a purpose, it doesn't mean that God doesn't have one, and a good one. You remember Moses, when Moses said, God, I want to see you. And God said, okay, Moses, I'll allow you to see me. But you see me from the back, not from the front. And it's interesting that many times in our lives we see God not face to face, but we see God when he passes. And then we see God from the back. Because we are not ahead of God. We are always behind God. We are always before, right? So, let's understand that God's purpose, God's providence is appropriate, is beautiful. Even if we don't understand, we don't make sense of everything. There is one fact that helps us in that process. And now we can link this book to the New Testament and to Jesus. Because when you go to Jesus, the Apostle Paul says that Jesus came in the fullness of time. The eternal entered the temporal. And Jesus lived like you and me. And many times he said, my time has not come yet. So Jesus submitted himself to time, to do things in God's time, not in his time, although he was God. And then when comes the time of resurrection, there is something astonishing happening. That Jesus submitted to our temporal life, but when he resurrected, he brought us, he opened a door to eternity. Remember the movies that you have a portal. Avengers, you have the portal. Okay? Jesus opened a portal to eternity when he resurrected. It was not just the rock, the stone that rolled away. That stone represents death. And when Jesus opened that door, he opened the possibility of understanding, to start seeing life from the other side, from the side of eternity. And things start making sense. And this is why the Apostle Paul brings or writes the book of the letter to the Corinthians. And you know that in chapter 15, 1 Corinthians 15 is the chapter of resurrection in the Bible. In this book, in this chapter, he says, if Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is in vain, and your faith is in vain, is vanity. The same word. If Jesus didn't resurrect, everything we believe is in vain, is vanity. There is no sense. And then, at the end of that chapter, the last verse, look what the Apostle Paul says. Therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord, in the resurrected Lord, your labor is not in vain. What's the question that we have here in the book of Ecclesiastes? What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? What's the gain of work? And here is the answer. The answer is, in the Lord, in the resurrected Lord, because this is the resurrection chapter in the Bible, your labor, your toil is not vanity. When you have the perspective of eternity, then it's not in vain. Let me say something. What you do from Monday to Friday has meaning. Your work matters to God. But it's necessary that you have the eternity, the perspective of eternity. Not only your few years in here. And it's important to have this portal before us, because it is there that you find the ultimate meaning for your life. So 3 lessons, 3 statements about time. God planned the seasons of life. God controls this time in history. And God's providence, God's control of everything is always beautiful. Even though, most times, living in that side of life, for us, we don't have answers for many things. And for many facts in our lives, we don't see beauty. We don't see that this is appropriate. But we need to understand that in God's perspective, in eternity, everything makes perfect sense. We are not seeing the whole picture. Let's trust God. And this leads us to the final of the sermon. 2 implications for us. What should we do with this? What the book of Ecclesiastes says. We have 2 verses in here, and the 2 verses where he starts saying, I perceived. In these 2 verses, we have the 2 implications. The first implication, make the most of every time. Make the most of every season. Enjoy every moment as a gift from God. Live the present. Look what he says. I perceived, verse 12 and 13, I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to men. God's gift to men. Some people think that if you are a Christian, you cannot have pleasure. It's not what the Bible says. We are seeing here that we should enjoy this life. Life is short, correct. We don't see everything, correct. So if we have this time to live present, let's live the present. And he says, live the present as everything that you have right now in your season, it is from God to you. It's a gift from God to you. Actually, he started saying that at the end of chapter 2. You see the last verses of chapter 2, verses 24 and 26. He says, there is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. It is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. God has given joy to you. Sometimes we are so trapped in the past and so worried about the future that we miss the gift God is giving us today. You live trapped in the past, or you live worried about the future. And what we learn here from these lessons is that God controls everything, the past, present, and future. Is not in your hands. You cannot control the past, you don't know the future, but God knows and God controls. So you have the present, and then he's saying, live the present. Sometimes, and if you are a parent, let me say this to you, sometimes we are so busy building a future for our kids that we forget to give them our presence today. So do you have small kids? Are you young? Do you have your dear ones with you? Are you healthy? So enjoy it today. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't say, oh, if I have this, if I have that, if this happens, if that happens, then I'll be happy. No, you need to be able to enjoy, to have joy, because God has given every time to you today. This is what you have today. If you can forgive someone today, do it. If you can say, I love you today, do it. If you can spend time with your beloved ones today, do it. Because there are lots of people in here that they cannot do this anymore. So, if you can do something good and have pleasure today, have pleasure today. This is the first lesson. I have a picture here about showing this sand castle, right? We don't have lots of these here, but it's very common. It believes. It exists, believe me, okay? You could think, why should I build a sand castle if I know that in 1 hour the waves will come and destroy everything? What's the point of building a sand castle? You don't bring the sand castle to your home. you leave it there, right? But let me say something. The castle will be destroyed. But the time that you will spend there with your kids will remain in their lives. So I'm talking about the present. I'm talking about having pleasure in the present things. Because at the end, everything in our lives is like sandcastle. The sandcastle remains for 1-2 hours. But everything that you have and that you are will pass. Time will kill everything. Believe me. I heard once a statement. I was shocked, but later on I was reflecting, and it's true. And the person said, every single church in the world will die, but the kingdom of God remains. Look at that. And it's right. Do you know the church of the Corinthians church? Ephesus, Colossians, Philippians? Where are they? Gone. One day, this church will be gone. And you are living here today. So you need to make the most of every season. You don't need to wait to be happy or to have joy in your life if things happen in the future. We need to learn how to be content. This is what the Apostle Paul says. We need to be content today. Make the most of every season. This is what the Apostle Paul is saying. And the second implication, the last one, is trust God in all seasons. The first one, you remember, make the most of every season. And the second one, trust God in all seasons. He says, I perceived, this is the second perceived, I perceived, verse 14, that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nothing can be, nor anything taken from it. God has done it so that people fear before Him. I already talked about the fear of the Lord as the beginning of wisdom. This is a concept in the book of Proverbs and here also in Ecclesiastes. But he's talking here about fear, and we can understand that he is talking about having a permanent awareness that God is before you all the time. And everything that happens in your life comes from God. God is present there in your life, in your time. So you should fear God. You should revere God in everything you do, because God is the giver of everything, every situation. Trust, there is a plan. Trust, the plan is good. Trust, God can accomplish the plan. If you fear God, let me say something to you. If you fear God, you don't need to fear the future. You get that? If you fear God, you don't need to fear the future. And many times we fear the future because we don't fear the Lord. So trust the Lord. And fearing the Lord is a conscious awareness that our covenant, our relationship with God is for all times. When you get married, you say for better or for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, from this day forward until death, do us apart. Vows. Our Christian life, our relationship with God is that way. God is not just for the good moments. God is for the bad moments as well. There is this, I already mentioned the Heidelberg Catechism from 1563, and in there we have the question, What does it benefit us to know that God has created all things and He still upholds them by His providence? And the answer is, we can be patient in adversity, thankful in prosperity, and with a view to the future, we can have a firm confidence in our faithful God and Father that no creature shall separate us from His love. So it says here, if you are in a good season right now, I say, be thankful. Don't think that this is deserved. Don't think that this is because you are smart. Don't think because this is your accomplishment. Be thankful to God. The preacher will say at the end of the book, remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, in the good days. Be thankful, because it's a gift from God. But if you are in a bad season, and all of us, remember, there's a time to be born and a time to die. Good seasons, bad seasons. This is life. Enjoy the present, every season, the first implication, and the second, trust the Lord. If you are in a bad season, be patient. Be patient. Be patient, because winter won't last forever. Although we have 6 months, but maybe our winter is a Canadian winter. Maybe our winter is a Brazilian winter. Okay? But the fact is that winter will pass. And there will be a new season coming in your life. And you should be able to rejoice in the seasons that God gives you. When, for example, Jesus said the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And it goes on. And in here we have contrasts. You are blessed if you are mourning today. You are not cursed. Why? Because there is a new season coming and you'll be comforted. So life comes in seasons. But in all seasons, bad and good seasons, we need to have the same attitude, fearing the Lord and walking by faith. In all seasons, walk by faith. Remember the divine tapestry. You do not need to see to believe that there is a good plan. You must believe to see the good plan. Even when you do not see purpose, you must believe there is a good purpose and that your work today matters to God on the other side of eternity. There is a quote from Spurgeon, and I like so much that quote when he says, when we cannot trace His hand, we must trust His heart. Many times in our lives, we cannot trace God's hand. We cannot understand what He is doing from the beginning to the end. Ecclesiastes 3. But we can trust His heart, that He came to us in Jesus Christ. The eternal became temporal to give us eternity. So the text finishes with a last verse saying, verse 15, that which is already has been, that which is to be already has been, and God seeks what has been driven away. The NIV version says, and God will call the past to account. It's a very difficult text to translate in here, verse 15. But the sense is that God will bring the past back. Have you seen Back to the Future? Time travel, I watched many movies on time travel. I love that concept. But the fact that I cannot do that, nobody can. However, God can do that. Let me say something. Time is irreversible to us, but not to God. God can reverse things. In eternity, one day, when you are the other side of life, your questions will be answered by God. And I am sure that you'll be totally satisfied with the questions. And you say, yes, Lord, I was, very naive because I was not seeing everything. The point is, when you don't see the meaning, trust. Because God is good. You remember when Jesus came to a city where he had a family of three: Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And Jesus heard that Lazarus was ill, John chapter 11. And he decided to stay 2 days longer in the place he was. Look at that. Your best friend is in trouble, life-threatening situation. And you know about that. And instead of coming, okay, I have some business here, you are late 2 days. Martha, when Jesus finally came, Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died, because he had died. And Martha was saying, Jesus, why did he, we were waiting for you. Why? You didn't come. And the answer is very interesting. And the answer is that Jesus came to resurrect Lazarus, not to heal him. Martha was waiting a healing. But Jesus wanted to give her a resurrection. And many times, from our perspective, we want to be healed. But Jesus was not late. Maybe Jesus was late to heal Lazarus, but he was not late to resurrect him. Jesus is never late. He's not a Brazilian. Okay? Jesus is never late. So he comes because Jesus is above this time experience. Jesus can see perfectly from the eternity perspective. I'd like to finish with this last verse on Acts chapter 6. Jesus resurrected, and then the disciples came saying, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom of Israel? This is the time that you will become the king of everyone. And the answer is very interesting. Jesus says, it is not for you to know times or seasons that the Father has fixed by his own authority. But it is not for you to know, to understand all seasons in your life. There will be many questions. But one thing you have, the power of the Holy Spirit living inside of you, and you have a mission to make disciples, to witness the resurrection of Jesus, to say to the whole world, hey, there is eternity, and there is a God that loves us, that has a plan. So the message in Ecclesiastes 3 is, trust God. Enjoy the season, and trust God in all the seasons.